I will be discussing it with three guests of mine, Matjaž Manček from Kino Šiška, probably nowadays the most important concert venue in Slovenia. Andraž Kajzer, who comes from Kapa record, independent record label, but is also one of the editors of now established Group magazine, which is an internet-based music magazine. And Miran Rusjan, out of independent record label Moonlee Records, a guy who established before mentioned platform Indigrad, etc. Before we start, I would like just to mention that in Slovenia, since we are such a small music market, everybody is everything, you know. Like Matjaž Manček is not only concert promoter, he was a music editor on radio, Student, music critic, reviewer, musician, etc. And probably this also is valid for all of us. And this says something about Slovene music market. And I would like to pose the first question to all of my guests, a bit of provocative one. Is there a Slovene music market?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, there are bands, there are clubs, there are music fans. We are bringing international artists. Bands are touring to some extent, also international markets. I think the weakest, I'm pretty sure the weakest of all the market segments in Slovenia is the record market. So record sales are really, as you mentioned before, they really went from little to almost none. And also, I don't have really statistics. I don't know the statistics, but also I think that also like MP3s, music. So digital music market is very poor. So digital says maybe Miran, maybe you know more about this, but this is still pretty much a low scale. But apart from that, we have good bands with I think quite a lot of potential also to break internationally. We are bringing, according to the smallness of market, capacity of market, we're bringing quite a lot of international bands. So yes, of course, the Vienna market is existing, and as I mentioned before, we have ups and downs in the recent history. I think in the recent years we have been facing some kind of like low run. Also now, it's of course it's partly connected to the whole political economic situation. Slovenia, which is pretty much, as we know, the Troika is putting the finger or three fingers towards Slovenia, and this of course this economical situation also affects the market itself logically. But yes, we have markets, and I think the potential of the artist to break through internationally is not realized enough. I think we have a lot to do on the scale of support mechanisms on the state institutional level, and also on the smaller self-organized levels of artist managements, booking, and so on and so on.
Yes, you mentioned like the record industry, but as you said, like the strongest part of, at least in my view, the strongest part of Slovene music market is the concert scene and the promotion thing. You have been working on both scales. For example, with your own small company, you were bringing smaller groups and smaller foreign acts, and also bringing Slovene bands to Austria, Slovakia, Germany, etc. And now you run a big venue program, musical program for a big venue, Kino Šiška in Vienna. So can you tell us a bit more about the two principles that you had to approach, and where do you see the potential, for example, in the first film that operates more on in the context of club scene, and on the wider scale in the context of bigger venue like Kino Šiška and organizing bigger festivals, etc.
Well, on a smaller scale, of course, it's a bit easier because it's less costs involved, budgets are less, and the risk is smaller to lose money, and it's more decentralized as the bigger concerts market, which is more or less, apart from some summer festivals, it's really, as you mentioned before, is concentrated in Vienna. On a smaller scale, there are clubs and smaller venues around Slovenia, which you can book some smaller, up to 200 capacity venues acts. When I was working on this with my private association before, booking this kind of more experimental acts, I was also using the possibility to access some public funding, which Ministry of Culture is giving this possibility, but on really kind of like limited extent. So it never really paid, like to book acts that bring 50 to 150 people. Of course, with all the costs collected, I had to have some public funding support in order to survive at the end of the day and the end of the year, of course. Also now I have to stress that now in this venue, Kino Šiška, it's a public institute. It's founded and funded by city council, so municipality of Vienna, and with this public funding support, we can afford to bring acts, international acts that cost a lot. They bring they bring relatively enough audience for our venue, but without this public funding, we couldn't really cover all the costs needed for this kind of acts. Relatively, I think it's for the smallest of market and this small to middle act scale. I think we have pretty healthy scene, and relatively, according to also bigger cities, sometimes we get the same kind of number of people for certain international acts, or even more than, for example, promoters in Zagreb or Vienna, when we talk about how successful certain booking was in this place. So I think relatively, in this scale, we are pretty okay. But when it comes to larger numbers, then of course the limitations of our market and just how many people is there around clearly show.
Yeah, it has to be said that a lot of activities in the music market and in the music scene and wider on the cultural scene are quite dependent in the last 10, 15 years in Slovenia, sadly, on public funding, either by the state or by the city governments. So many organizations that are doing different types of production, even in the field of music, are quite dependent on this funding to survive and to operate. But not all of them. You, Andraž, and you, Miran, you both not only work in the label, but also sometimes you book bands, sometimes you organize tours for Slovene bands, you book bands not only from Slovenia, but from other countries. So could you explain us just practically what it means in Slovenia, for example, to book a smaller foreign band, to place it in the club, to organize maybe a small tour for the band, etc. Which are the opportunities that foreign acts could have actually on the Slovene concert scene and musical market?
Well, of course it depends on how big the act is,
Yeah.
but acts that can play clubs with capacity 100 to 300
Yeah.
can maybe play on regular tour, 1, 2 or maybe 3 shows in Slovenia. That means they must play Vienna, where the center is on, I guess, Thursday, and weekends are reserved for other regions and other cities. So that means they can cut the costs because they are not, the cities are not that apart.
Mhm.
But it means they can do some promotion and some concerts from now and then on a smaller scale, on a smaller level.
Mhm.
And it really depends on the band, on the genre, and of course their attention in Slovenia. So.
Yeah, maybe like, I mean, Slovenia is really small market. I mean, maybe some demographic numbers, like Slovenia is 2 million people. Biggest city, Ljubljana, has 300,000, and there's like 10 cities with more than 15,000 people. 15,000 people, so it's, but on the other side, there is lots of small cities. And if we heard before about this tour, the Klubski Marathon, where the Študent sends the young bands abroad Slovenia, they have averagely like 30 shows are booked in Slovenia. So there is actually lots of clubs, but of course maybe there is not so much public interested in these kind of shows. I mean, there is places where you can book shows, you can organize, but you never know how it will turn out. On the other hand, like Slovenia is specific maybe because also in these small cities you have some really interesting subcultures, kind of, when the whole generation is part of some subculture, and it can be really small villages. They can have festivals and stuff where like do shows. So for if you like put some effort and like maybe first time, second time, third time bring a band to some city, you can slowly like kind of build the fan base, and then it's possible to book more shows. But this also maybe another specific of Slovenian market is this like kind of I mean more focused like on the Slovene acts and maybe acts from Republic of ex-Yugoslavia, which they're kind of still feel some connections and they're like more close to like so forth. And another maybe specific of Slovenian music fan is that maybe he's not so well educated what is going on in like on the global scene. They know like the most known acts, they know also like kind of some subcultures, but it's also this maybe they don't have this wide picture what all is happening like globally. But on the other hand, like this Slovenian fan is curious, like so he will go to a show that he doesn't know nothing about. If you manage to like build a story around some band, he will go to check it out. Of course, you will check it through the net and stuff, but he will go on a show not even if he's not a fan yet. He will just I'll go to check it out. Like, so this kind of gives some space and opportunity to do something like. But this again, if we talked before, like we have like concerts and I mean the specter of concerts, the specter of record labels. Of course, maybe he's curious, but he's not so curious to buy records. Maybe he's just more into going to shows. But then again, if I put it in the perspective of record label, it's just like simply you sell like 90% or more like on shows. Like, so we heard before there is almost no record stores. There are a few these chains, let's say. It's hard to get in, and also like the people who would buy records are not really searching the records in these chains anymore. So basically, like on these shows, you will also sell records. So this kind of, and as we are all connected and do all different stuff, various stuff, we also all the things are connected. Like the shows and the record sales happening there.
One of the themes every year, each year on this kind of conference, it's the possibility of not only exchanging information but actual networking. I would like to ask how much is networking important in terms of Slovenian musical market, and if it already exists, and which are the opportunities for more networking with different booking agencies, promoters, bands, medias, etc. from other countries.
The options, of course, are endless, and networking collaboration with other markets is essential for a small market in Slovenia, because it gets simply saturated by itself very quickly. The bands, they have really limited possibility of touring inside Slovenia, so it's kind of like natural. Naturally, they tend to break out and have some possibility to tour outside of Slovenia. I was involved quite in a lot of this kind of networking or international collaboration in various projects. At first, I was involved with networking or like making the ties again with the ex-Yugoslavian scenes with a radio show, which was on Radio Student 10 years ago for 7 years. It was called Cross Radio, and I think it was very important at that time. It started in 2001, so pretty much soon after the war ended in the Balkans, and it was kind of like, I think and it still is a natural kind of way to try to connect first the market that used to be actually the same market not long ago, and was broken at that time, and then from this to spread on networking in other fields, and from there I think it's very natural to spread networking, trying to collaborate, trying to build touring possibilities in neighboring countries. Austria, I think, is very important for Slovenian scene. Eastern Europe as such, yes, I think it's very important also like this opportunity here that Slovenian scene, the bands and professionals have to just spread the possibilities to point out the qualities of the Slovenian artists.
I guess it's really hard because Luka mentioned before in his lecture that we used to have a bigger market like 20 years ago, which was Yugoslavia. But today it's more like Miran told about the concert scene. bands from Yugoslavia are playing Slovenia and are becoming more well known through the years in Slovenia. They can get more audience, more shows, but Slovenian bands don't know how to use this X market, and actually Croatia, Serbia are not that interested in Slovenian market, in Slovenian bands. This is why, I think this is because Slovenia can decide if it is east or west. It's something in between. It's a crossroad.
Yeah.
So now we're looking through the doors like, should we try to build another road to Yugoslavia, or are we opening the doors to Europe?
Well, both, of course. It's like,
Of course, yeah, but it's not really happening that way.
Yeah. Actually, we have
in
two foreign markets.
In Yugoslavia.
We have two foreign markets, and we always did. Also, when there was Yugoslavia was still one country. Actually, I mean, the bands had to kind of like decide also strategically. I mean, the language is very important. So, like Slovenian language is spoken just in Slovenia. In Yugoslavia, as we said before, was the language which was with which you could cover the whole Yugoslavian market was Serbo-Croatian. So like basically the official language of Yugoslavia. And in the 90s, as you mentioned, the Slovenian artists started on a greater scale to use English language and ambitions to break into the Western Europe or abroad and internationally whatsoever. And about the ex-Yugoslavian market, I think it's of course, again, it's a language thing. So if you have a good hip-hop act singing in Slovenian, it's still this language barrier. I mean,
yeah, but it's really interesting because a Slovenian hip-hopper with Slovenian lyrics can't play, I don't know, in Belgrade. He can, but people won't be that interested. But for example, Edo Majka from Bosna, from ex-Yugoslavia, is huge in Slovenia. That's the interesting fact.
Yeah.
We understand and they don't, or something.
Yeah, I think it's a fact that, this, for example, like Slovenians pretty well understand Serbo-Croatian, whatever. But the people from Croatia, Serbia, Macedonia don't really understand Slovenian at all, mostly. So it's this language barrier is really, it's like more. That's why it's maybe
it's one way.
So one way, yeah, because it's one way.
We share your frustration, so in Macedonia, it's the same shit like in Slovenia, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
you.
Since you talk, we should do both ways, like to the east and to the west.
go east and go west.
Yeah, I always thought about these kind of conferences and festivals like, okay, we are trying, maybe it's a naive thinking, but still we are trying to build up a kind of like European music market and European scene that is not so much dependent on global Anglo-American music industry, and create a field, a possibility of wider European music industry on the concert level, on the level of labels, etc. In this way, you know, what is the possibility for groups from, let's say, a region of Central Europe, or like Austrian groups, Italians, Belgian groups, and to actually enter the Slovene market at all, you know, not just playing gigs. Is there a possibility in Slovenia to get promotions, to get to the media attention, even maybe to sell a record or distribute it through some channels?
About media attention, this is pretty hard. The media, apart from Radio Student, which is still, I mean, it's covering non-commercial, non-profitable, but musically interesting artists. Apart from it, it's very hard. You would get, I mean, if you book a band from basically a band that it's not known to the wider audience, it's very unlikely you will get played on some like radio with wider range of audibility, or to get it covered in a magazine, paper, or whatever. I mean, this kind of events, showcase conferences like Waves, like Eurosonic, and other festivals, showcase events of this range, they are doing, I think, a pretty good job, and they're boosting the possibility for non-English, non-American artists, quality artists to tour around, to get the audience, to get some attention. We had few really good bands and pretty well attended shows, like with bands like Everett and the Two Dragons, Estonian band. So again, from the market, which is even smaller than Slovenia. When we are saying about the smallness of the market, we cannot just, you know, it's of course it's a difficult thing, but it's not impossible. I think now I'm jumping to other things, but I think, you know, the Estonian scene with Tallinn Music Week, again, the showcase conference that they are having there, I think it's a pretty good example how with some good idea and strategic thinking and kind of like structured system support, you can boost the local scene to the extent that the Tallinn Music Week, it's not just bringing professionals from the region and widely international professionals to Tallinn and good hot bands playing there, but with this they're putting Estonia on the map of European music market and making also Estonian bands more interesting to the international market and just visible. So yeah, we had like Estonian bands, we had 150 people on the show, which is pretty good for the band that was not known amounts prior to the show, to the Slovenian audience. We had French films, the Finnish band, also indie rock band, pretty well intended show. So it's possible. It's harder to get attention of the audience, especially of the media, but it's possible. And I think this is worth of efforts. I think it's more and more important, also from my perspective and perspective of my organization, the venue, that we are giving possibilities to this kind of artists. So European perspective artists touring around, and not just picking the obvious big shots and bringing them and filling up the big venue. This is actually, it's not easy, but it's kind of, in a way, to give possibility to the smaller European artists is kind of even more rewarding, especially if you get the feedback from the audience.
We have mostly talked about the concert side of music market in Slovenia. Let's now talk a bit about the record industry, if we can call it industry in Slovenia. Like I said before, in the 90s, suddenly we have small market, but emerging market, you know, like record labels appeared, record shops appeared, a lot of new medias appeared, radio stations, etc., musical shows on national television and commercial TV stations start appearing, etc., and the club scene really blossomed, etc. But with this crisis in music industry, suddenly we are back in the beginning, you know, like the commercial radio stations are playing only highly pop-orientated music, 20 songs in heavy rotation each day. It's hard even for Slovene mainstream rock artists to enter the commercial radio system. There is almost no TV shows now on the national level of television. Record shops are fewer and fewer. Medias are still existing. There are some new initiatives, some new medias appearing. They are transferring from paper to digital, etc. So how does one run a record label what do you think are if there are some perspectives in running a record label and establishing again a kind of a sort of a market for records in Slovenia?
Well, as you said, we talk about concerts a lot.
Yeah.
And this is what record labels do nowadays.
Yeah.
Like me and Miran are both running the label, are releasing CDs, are booking artists, but we also, like the main thing is the concerts. There's more money in concerts than in selling records, and then there's more records sold on concerts than everywhere else. In Ljubljana we have, I don't know, 4 record shops, where we can sell the CDs, vinyls, and maybe there's a few more in the whole region. So this means we try to focus to get the attention of the audience with the music, to get the album is like just a printed version of what you're actually selling in kind of a way. So we're not really doing the 360 thing, well, I'm not, but it's more, I don't know, 250. You're doing the concerts, you're doing the releases. So I think it's not only the problem in Slovenia, but in the whole worldwide music market. But Slovenia doesn't have any strict rules about digital downloads, like pirate downloads, which means, like in from my label, most of the digital sales are in foreign countries, not in Slovenia, which is really interesting. Because other countries and people from foreign countries are used to, already learned to download, to pay for music, for digital music. But in Slovenia this is only slowly progressing because people would still like to hold if they pay.
Yeah.
What do you think?
But I mean, generally yes, it's you're basically releasing a record, like kind of idea of a band, or like to like something in the timeline of the band. And also that you can make some story and to get some extra media coverage, so you make some buzz about the band around that record, which itself it will probably not cover, but you can somehow cover everything through booking and like to. I mean, it's a fact that of course you put the records in all these 3-4 shops and like cover Slovenia somehow, but there you will sell less than like on 1 or 2 good organized and good promoted shows. Like, so these are like the facts. Like digital sales of.
Well, you created a nice platform along with Radio Student called Indigrad, which is a gathering of a lot of Slovenian independent labels. And as I understand it, maybe later we progress to include also labels from the territory of ex-Yugoslavia or something?
Yeah, this Indigrad is like internet platform for independent record labels from Slovenia. So on this one spot they can put all the news about the bands, tours, releases. There is also this online shop. There is like basic, maybe this is interesting for all of you, there is like basic info point with addresses of almost all the clubs, some journalists, record labels, with some information which can be like useful for somebody from outside Slovenia about what is happening on this alternative independent scene in Slovenia. There is like some discography where you can check like this list of discography releases released in Slovenia or somehow connected to Slovenia. So where it's seen that it's really this scene is alive. I mean, there's like 60, 70 phonographic releases every year in Slovenia, which is like for small market pretty okay, I think. Score. So it's one platform where you can basically find on one spot information what is happening on this scene, and also like if we talk about this online shop, it's kind of I noticed like, I mean, since I'm like all the time like with the bands on the shows and like in contact with people, many times they said like, yeah, this is really great band, I would like to buy stuff, but I don't know where to get it. Like, these record shops. People, it's a fact, people don't really check in these record shops or in Europe anymore. And sometimes they're not really how skillful like searching on the net, and like if we offer them like this all this bunch of releases on one spot and like with the since it's done like with the help of Radio Student, which really has like a wide public, it's maybe we can like direct these music fans who are interested to one spot where you can easily get it, and maybe this is something that can be like kind of thing that will help or to establish market or to just help the scene to grow up. Because as we heard before, like in the last 2-3 years, there is really like uprising of really good bands like this. If many years ago I was kind of really skeptical, I'm turning more towards like Croatian bands and bands. I think nowadays it's really good, and like maybe I'm also.
Let's be optimistic and finish our talk in that way. But if you want to pose a question, you can do it.
I don't have a question, but I can tell my opinion about Slovenian week in Austria.
Yeah.
No, about Slovenian music. I work a lot in Slovenia, different things. Sometimes, usually always take money from you, but sometimes sell the band, sometimes sell the records, whenever. And I think that Slovenia is the best situation in all former Yugoslavia because have the best underground clubs, plays, and all possibilities to it's closer to Europe and everything, so it's in the best position from the other countries. Yeah. Only what Slovenia misses is some persistent manager or bookers or something like that. You know, in my office, right? Don't fuck beautiful, fuck persistent. So you need somebody who are in the middle in the circle and will push more with to promote Slovenian bands and to, you know, because you have a different example like Laibach. You know, Laibach was worldwide famous, so maybe they play on English, but somebody was work with him good with labels, working with like a manager and you know, on the whole story. So I can take an example with Elvis Jackson. Maybe it's a small band, but with crazy manager like Sandy Maurer, they try they play everywhere. So the thing what you miss in this moment, I think it's a good manager, not good manager only for clubs, good manager only to take money with the concert or sell the good managers for the bands. This is what Slovenia miss in this moment. This is my opinion. And
yeah. Thank you, Logan, for this kind of also introduction to the next panel that I'll be hosting in 5 minutes, which will be basically about how international professionals are seeing the Slovenian scene and market and sharing quite with us. But what Logan, you were saying, I think this also I mentioned at the beginning. I mean, we have good bands. We have quite some infrastructure. What we have to work exactly this: networking, professionalizing, building supportive support systems, and strategies. Also on this state level. I mean, right now we are talking also with Ministry of Culture to try to establish kind of a music export office in Slovenia to be able to provide support platforms also on the events such as this and others around Europe and elsewhere, because it's obvious that without without this, it's very hard for the most quality artists to break through.
You still don't know what is art, so be happy with all this support.
We're giving you some money, as you
Yeah.
said.
Okay, shall we take a 5-minute break and then it's your pen.